Hey guys, now that you've watched the summary of chapter 3, it's pretty easy. We should be able to get a feel for what we're going to do as we read it. But just to make it really explicit what we're going to try and achieve these goals, we're going to form a nuanced understanding of what is being argued in Book 1, Chapter 3. The success criteria we need to achieve in order to get to the big goal is we need to draw on our prior knowledge from the summary we discussed beforehand, and we need to elaborate on our prior knowledge. We need to look at the extra detail, the extra meat to the arguments that's provided in the writing rather than the summary provided. So quickly write those down and score yourselves out of 4. And then from there, what I would like you to do is to draw a picture of a man who is actually capable of exercising reason. Draw a picture of a reasonable man. Okay, so the nature of the science is what's being discussed in chapter 3. And underneath we have a little subheading which says we must not expect more precision than the subject matter admits of, and the student should have reached years of discretion, which is another way of saying have acquired the experience required to engage in a thoughtful and considered inquiry into the nature of political science. You can't have that if you're young. Okay, let's start reading. Number 3. Our discussion will be adequate if it has much clearness as the subject matter admits, for precision is not to be sought for alike in all discussions, any more than the products of the craft. Now, noble and just actions, which political science investigates, exhibit much more variety and fluctuation, so that they may be thought to exist only by convention and not by nature. That's pretty clear to understand. The first sentence I think was a bit difficult. I think what he's basically saying is the precision is related to the craft being discussed. Obviously, if you're talking about woodwork, would you have more precise and more clear concepts and a more precise and clear way of explaining what's going on? Or would it be more vague? I think it would be more clear because the subject matter would allow you to do that. But when you're discussing actions that relate to political sciences, they have a larger variety and difference, which is what fluctuation refers to. So, people may think that the physis and the nomos argument is going ahead here, and that would be correct. Maybe social convention is what is allowing us to identify what are just and noble acts rather than nature in and of itself. And we'll see what he has to say further about that. But take a note. Here we go. But goods exhibit a similar fluctuation because they bring harm to many people. For before now men have been undone by reason of their wealth, and others by reason of their courage. We must be content then in speaking of such subjects and which premises to indicate the truth roughly and in outline, and in speaking about things which are only for the most part true, and with premises of the same kind to reach conclusions that are no better. So what he's saying is here, you must be content with the fact that in our writing, we're going to deal with premises that indicate a roughly true argument, something that's true in outline, but not 100% precise. Okay, so this is that warning that I mentioned in the summary. And we must remember that we're speaking about things that are for the most part true. And we have premises. Remember, put premises together and they form a conclusion, which is how you generate an argument, to reach conclusions that are no better. So our conclusions are going to be no better than the premises. If they're rough, well, we can argue that our conclusions are going to be rough. Take a note. In the same spirit, therefore, should each type of statement be received, for it is the mark of an educated man to look for precision in each class of things just so far as the nature of the subject admits. So educated people can only see precision as much as the subject allows them to see precision. It is evidently equally foolish to accept probable reasoning from a mathematician and to demand from a rhetorician demonstrative proofs. which is basically him using examples. We know maths can provide demonstrative proofs of certain concepts. It can be very exact and precise. But rhetoric, well, rhetoric does provide us with probable reasoning. It can't be pinned down. It can't be exact. All right? Let's move on. Now, each man judges well the things he knows. So if you're a carpenter and you know it quite well, you're quite capable of judging the quality of another person's work. And of these, he is a good judge. So he's good at judging things that he knows, and he's a good judge. And so the man who has been educated in a subject is a good judge of that subject, and the man who has received an all-round education is a good judge in general. So what he's saying here is that you should pick somebody to be a judge in general who's had a lot of experience in many different fields. You probably can predict where this is going to go. Take a note. All right, from there, we obviously know that the young men don't have experience, which is pointed out in the summary, and so he's going to say pick older men with more experiences in many different fields because they're most likely to be judges of something, good judges in areas as broad as the areas covered in political science. Okay. Hence, a young man is not a proper hearer of lecturers on political science, for he is inexperienced in the actions that occur in life. But its discussions start from these and are about these, and further, since he tends to follow his passions, his study will be vain and unprofitable, because the end aimed at is not knowledge but action. So what he's actually saying here is not that judgmental. He's saying if you haven't yet to experience things, you need to engage in the actions that will allow you to generate that basic level of knowledge needed to acquire an even deeper knowledge of things. And a young person, if he's taught about political science, hasn't had that that action in the past to allow him to build that base level of knowledge so he can build even deeper knowledge that you acquire in the political sciences. So take a note. And it makes no difference whether he is young or youthful in character. So what we're not judging people who are young, we're really judging people who are young in terms of their character. Take a note. The defect does not depend on time, but on his living. So it's about the way you live your life and pursuing each successive object as passion directs. For such persons as to the incontinent, knowledge brings no profit. But to those who desire and act in according with reason, knowledge about such matters will be of great benefit. So what he's saying is if you just follow your passions willy-nilly, you haven't had the actions you require for related reflection, knowledge of whatever we talk about is just not going to give you any gains. You need that basic experience in order to profit from the knowledge you'll acquire. Okay? Follow your passions first, and then you'll have something to reflect on to build this basic knowledge. But of course, that's not just about a young person. It's about anyone's youthful in character. And you can imagine a young person actually having an older character and being ready to study this. Okay. But to those who desire and act in accordance with reason, knowledge about such matters will be of great benefit. So what he's saying is that you need to be someone who acts in accordance with reason in order to benefit from political science. Take a note. And the last thing is these remarks about the student, the sort of treatment to be expected, the purpose of inquiry may be taken as our preface. So he's basically saying, now that I've talked about who you need to be and how you're going to profit from what we've studied, let's get into the meaty stuff, the real philosophical stuff. Take a note. So this chapter wasn't really that complex. I mean, I think we really did just elaborate on things that were discussed in the summary. I think we actually add a lot of meat to the skeletal outlines that we provided in the summary. And we definitely elaborated on that prior knowledge. So give yourself a score on these two success criteria and have a look to see whether or not you've improved in terms of your actual understanding of what was outlined in chapter 3. Thank you.